Were you born in a small town? Where were you born?
I was actually born in Logansport, Indiana, which is like, I think like an hour or two from Indianapolis. And that was initially where I was from. And then I was raised in northern Michigan, about 30 minutes north of Electric Forest. And my dad lived in South Bend, Indiana. So I was really just like an Indiana-Michigan hybrid, which is great. But you know.
Were there differences?
Differences, now that I'm an adult and can kind of figure it out, like definitely big differences. Michigan is way better.
Because to me, I grew up in Minneapolis, and then I lived in Chicago for a long time. Had a bunch of friends in rural Michigan. So I kind of, I would go around the Midwest a fair amount. But now I'm trying to think, like, what's the difference between rural Michigan versus rural Indiana? Or not rural.
Cornfields.
Yeah.
Cornfields, I would say, is the difference. But it's Michigan's definitely a little bit more progressive for sure. It's all essentially, I mean, I was in really small places each time, either place. Yeah. So, but thankfully I had a lot of really good friends and friends I'm still, tight with to this day from the rural areas. And I now live in Detroit, and living here and like, there's just times where I'm like, oh my God, I wish I would have grown up just like in a city, at least in Michigan, because I just would have had a different experience. But I still love Michigan. I ride for Michigan.
No, I love Michigan too, man. There's definitely something about the people from Michigan are very unique people. Everyone I meet.
We got to have good personality over here.
Yeah, I guess that's right. So, yeah, I mean, talk about growing up in a small town and, sort of having to seek out the things you were passionate about rather than just having them surrounding you all the time.
I would say, I remember Excision tweeted this when we were still, even just going to Excision shows regularly. I remember him tweeting that, like, he found that, like, the kids in the rural towns went way harder than the people in the cities because it's not readily available to you to have a show every weekend. And when we were up in northern Michigan, we would drive 2 to 4 hours just to get somewhere, and then, the same distance back to go for a show to one night and then go to work the next day.
Right.
And because that was the only option. We lived in the middle of nowhere. That was it. Unless Forest was happening, then it was like drive 30 minutes down the road, have the ball. But I think having Forest mixed with that, like, crazy, like most people, if they had to drive 2 hours for a show, they would only do it like once a month, and we would do it like every weekend, right, or like as sometimes during the weeks. And I think having that kind of, like, it's just like that's the only place you could experience the things that weren't available to us. So it kind of created this, like, diehard vibe.
I mean, what was musically, like, what was around you at that time? Like, how did you discover, like, more underground kinds of music, dance music, any of that?
I would say, like, I just remember there was like the time when it was kind of like blowing up. And when I was probably like 15 or 16, when it was starting to be like, Skrillex was at his, like, like my dad's ringtone was like first of the year of the Equinox.
No way.
And I was just like, okay, like, clearly there's something going on where this is huge now. And seeing it, it's like a lot of, like, seeing it online and then realizing, oh, well, Steve Aoki's coming like 2 hours away to Grand Rapids, or, another artist is coming here or there. And you just eventually are like, let's go see what it's about. You go to your first one. And then once you kind of, for me as a queer person, knowing there was just giant dance floor spaces where people were all pretty cool, like, at least, most people were cool to you. Like, I had to go keep doing more of that personally, because I'm not getting that in my everyday life. My first big festival was Electric Forest, and I was 16, and just experiencing all of that at such a young age, like, I think that just opened the doors for what I already wanted to be a performer. Okay. I already wanted to do music, but then, like, seeing this whole other culture that I didn't really know existed was like, holy shit.
Right. That's maybe the first like seed of a thought of like, oh, maybe this is a way I could make that happen.
Absolutely. And I don't even think I was having that thought. I just really enjoyed raves. Like I just really enjoyed festivals and stuff. I don't think I was like, this is how you're going to make things work. It wasn't until like way later that I was like, oh, this actually all worked.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the more pure version of it, of just, kind of this feels right. Right.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And so you were saying that, you always thought of yourself as a performer in one way or another. Were you performing in some way, even as a young kid?
So I was like, I think I started like dancing at like, I was probably like 12 or 13 when I started to really get into dance. And my brother was working on music a lot at the same time. And we would like make little songs together. I would do talent shows where I'd like dance to these like mixes of my favorite songs. That was like, I would always like gear myself up for this like one thing all year and be like the talent show. And at that point, that was like technically a version of me getting comfortable being on stage and just having that be a thing. I don't know. I think it was just like dance. And then in those years of just being super diehard for electronic music, it was like I was a hooper flow artist, but also starting to DJ and like making little mixes here and there. And then eventually it was like, okay, like I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to start rapping. I'm going to start working on music with all my friends. And now we're here.
Was there a moment when you sort of flipped from this is a passion, this is a hobby, this is something I do as a release, kind of thing, to this could be something I could do as a profession. This could be something I could actually build my life around?
I think it wasn't until I started like in 2019, early 2019, I started to get booked. And I didn't have a manager or anything. I was just booking myself. So I was like terrible at it. It was making no money. But it was just like, I think then when I was like, oh, well, like someone's like willing to help me fly out to Denver so I can play music. And then slowly cosigns from other artists started happening just because of like my vibe and like me DJing. And like, also like my sets were kind of known for just being kind of like this, like, kind of sassy dance party. And for being honest, at that point, I think GRiZ had come out, but there wasn't like, I wouldn't say there was like a really out there queer DJ at that point. So I was just kind of like immediately having that moment myself. And that was when I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like quit my job, make no money off of this. I made no money probably for like a year, and which is a much smaller time than a lot of people actually have to deal with. So I've always considered myself very lucky, but it was probably in that 2019 where like the DJing started to switch into like shows, and I got to like practice my stage presence and all of those things. And I was like, oh yeah, we can do this seriously.
Yeah, again, that's great. That's how it should happen. It's kind of a natural evolution of it, I think. I mean, it's interesting to think about too. You made me think about, you were saying that like at the time, there weren't really a lot of queer DJs representing on big stages, festivals, that kind of thing. And and you're right. And I don't know. Do you feel like, I'll start with this. Do you feel like that's changing at this point? Because it sort of seems like we're talking about it a lot more, but then the actual progress, I think, is sometimes a little behind that. I would say
there's more representation with like trans, as well as, like just gender nonconforming people, and more women are killing it too. Like really killing it, like Closey REZ to name off, two headliners. More Kismet, super talented non-binary act.
Love more Kismet.
And I was just on the phone with Kara Babyweight from DC.
Oh, I know Babyweight.
And she told me to tell you hello.
Hi.
I just think there's more people that are getting a chance. I wouldn't say that we immediately have like a bunch of, queer acts at the moment that are like, on a level where GRiZ is at or something like that. Like we don't have a bunch of people right at the top like that. It's still kind of not that way, but I think more queer people are getting an opportunity. than before, for sure, because they're just being open and out about who they are. And that's like, the times are changing, but I don't see like, it's not like everybody's immediately a headliner.
Right. Yeah. Of course. And I mean, using the example of GRiZ, who I love, and he's been on this podcast, and I'm a huge fan always. I think he's a really interesting example because he built his whole thing, what GRiZ is today, not outside of the system exactly, but kind of like parallel to it.
He's built such because I mean, he was one of those people. He's a Polish boy from Michigan, so I can relate there. And we would travel so far for GRiZ all the time, just because we, love his music. And like, I think that when he finally got to that point where he could kind of come out and be like, "Hey, this is me," his fan base only even grew even more. So like, he spent a long time kind of calculating how he was going to be perceived and stuff. I think in a predominantly straight hetero dominated industry, I can totally understand why, but I think him coming out and kind of like, he had already achieved headliner status at that point. Yeah. So it was like, then you can come out. It's almost like a Lil Nas thing. Like Lil Nas achieved like Old Town Road, and then won like record of the year in like country and like fucking like with like the Black community as well. And then was like, I'm also queer. Yeah. And by the way, that has right, which is not normal in like the hip hop scene as well as, country music. So I think like they both kind of have similarities in the sense like they got themselves to where they could be comfortable too, and then, unveiled themselves. And I think that's really been helpful to smaller artists. Like for me, I've been out since I was 14. Okay. So it's like, really, I've always said there was 4 gay people in my town and I was 3 of them. So for me, it's like always been this like thing, but I think for other huge acts to come out, it really opens the doors for all of us to kind of succeed.
Was that difficult at 14? Was that like a hard choice to make, to come out publicly at that time if there weren't a lot of other gay people around?
I think at that point, other people, because of my mannerisms and like the way I spoke, I don't even think I would say I was like ready to come out. It's just I was dealing with so much crap from people that I was like, okay, well, clearly like something's going on here. So I'll just like let this be out there. So people just like once I was like out and wasn't like denying anything, people were like, oh, cool, whatever. Like left me alone. But I think it was like when it was like the beforehand, it was definitely just, I don't know anything else. So I think for me now I'm really thankful I got it out of the way, because I have, some people come out of the closet way late in life and some people come out of the closet earlier. And for me, I think I've just been able to acclimate myself to just like living an out and proud queer life quicker, which is I'm appreciative of. But I don't think I fully really understood. I didn't understand like my gender identity. I didn't fully understand like the whole scope of myself.
Have you figured it out now at this point, or do you still feel like you're evolving and changing?
I definitely think since last year, it's so funny because even a year ago right now, I was still wearing like jeans and a t-shirt on stage and I wasn't feeling like myself. I would say with my gender identity, I'm much more like with performing and stuff. I have things kind of figured out where I'm like, I can express both sides of my identity, which is like sometimes like at home, like very, very boyish, very just like sweats, shorts, normal like clothing. But then like in my, like with what I do as Wreckno, it is like I take on this, it's me, but it's turned up to 11. Yeah. And like, I'm this version of myself that has been there the whole time. Like I was 16 and doing myself up in drag or like, stuff like that. But we didn't really have dialogue around it. So now there's this dialogue, like Gen Z has a beautiful array of like ways to understand and identify themselves. Yeah. And I think at that point, it was just easier for me to be like, I'm gay rather than be like, okay, and I'm like all these other things. And I definitely have a much better understanding of myself now. And it's come through performing and like just being myself on stage. Yeah, it's like definitely just not gender nonconforming for sure.
Yeah, it's very cool that you have been able to kind of have that personal journey while you're having this journey as an artist, as a musician, because I think just one of those is a lot to deal with, but then dealing with, kind of hitting another level as a musician, as, doing vocals, becoming known as a front person, not only a DJ and a producer, all of that, going on tour, getting no sleep, going through all of that at the same time, I think would be overwhelming for anybody. So I think it's kind of awesome that you've been able to just do it all at the same time.
Sliding into like who I am on stage and also just as a person, like it's helped all of that. Like it's at least in the sense of like there's a lot of pressure in general that I'm still learning how to cope with like every day. But when it comes to like at least like I felt like I was like drowning at one point, but because of all the stuff that was going on, and not being myself on stage was adding to it. And I think since kind of having that shift where I'm like, there's just like so much more I want to do to express myself here, to reach more people, as well as just like feel like authentic. It's helped the whole, like, and it's not a burden. It's just being an entertainer is, it's a weird, intense thing.
Well, it's almost a spiritual thing for me sometimes where, and I am in no way comparing my experience to yours or anyone else's, but for me, being on stage, sometimes when you're DJing, performing, whatever, you're operating off of instinct to a certain extent, and you don't always know why you do the things you do, or you're not intellectually processing what you're doing. You're just kind of doing the performance, and that it's definitely taught me things about myself. Oftentimes, I'll feel like that's probably actually a more true representation of who I am at my core than, me in a meeting talking to somebody,
right. Thinking about everything you're saying versus like what you're just putting out there. I can relate to, I mean, performing and it's very spiritual for me too. So like it's therapy sometimes too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a group thing too, right? Like you were talking about you want to define these dance floors that you could be on with accepting people and all of that. I mean, there's a community aspect. There's some kind of, I don't know, if we're staying on the spiritual thing, some kind of like, like energy that's generated by that exchange.
You share that with a bunch of people as well. Definitely.
It's interesting because talking about like the lack of queer representation when you first started, I think back to even before the early trap days, but kind of in the like indie electro, like blog house days, which I may or may not have been a little before your time. Back then, it was much more queer friendly in terms of the performers, and then that whole scene and that whole movement, just like any scene, like it had its day and it kind of faded away. And I think when dance music became EDM and that term came around, and I think really when more money started coming in and became like more mainstream, but just more, like money, like more capital was flowing in. I think all of the culture kind of got squeezed out. And I don't know, it's optimistic to think that maybe now some of it can come back in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously when the big bubble started, it was, every lineup was, hetero men pretty much. And then Cruella was there too.
Shout out to Cruella.
But but it's just like, I don't know. I guess it's just also being immersed in, like the scene I'm in now, and knowing so many queer friends that are also making music, as well as like Lozy and Rez are two of the people, and GRiZ. All three of them have just like put me on so hard. And that has, I don't know, I guess I've just been very lucky with like the few, they're all queer in their own way. So it's like having the right people kind of seeing your project for what it is and being like, let us help.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you, I know you've told this story before, but just briefly, how did you meet GRiZ? How did you go from being, the fan to the peer?
It was essentially it was a last minute thing where so I was friends with Muzzy because I was friends with Muzzy's roommate, and it was one of those things where I think normally if they knew Grant was coming, they probably wouldn't have had anybody else at the house. But Grant last minute decided to come that weekend, and I had my first show in Detroit shows that weekend, and like I was on my way down, and my friend Tyler, who was Muzzy's roommate, just called me and was like, "Hey, be chill, but like Grant's gonna be here today." And I was like, "No, like be like so chill." Get off the phone, scream out my car window, and like you know, it was just a really natural thing that happened. Like hung out as friends, and you know, later on that year, I think I went over for like a free shows for the people or something when I was in Denver for a show. And we just had communication since then. And I had told him, I think around that same time, the second time we hung out in Denver, that like what I saw for my project, which was that I wanted to be like gay white Lizzo in a sense of just like when it came to like empowerment and body positivity and just like being yourself, those things. I was really like enamored by that and really wanted to put that out into the world. And he gave me the best piece of advice, which was like, okay, you want to do that. You really got to like, you have to like do that. Like internally, you have to do the work to be that person and not just like talk. And a year later, quarantine happened, and he probably remembered that, had heard some of my songs rapping and was like, got an idea, and Medusa happened, and woo!
That's a big
Love
one.
that, man.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a song like that, was it that kind of like a light switch in terms of, you know, your profile and the eyes on you and just opportunities and all of that?
Definitely. And it was also, it got like whiplash because it was like, we're in the house. We're not able to go anywhere at that point. And then I came back for shows next year in May, and it was like, you are going to be doing this for a minute, and you're going to be doing this more than you have. And I think the longest break I've had since May 2021 was probably like three and a half weeks, maybe. So after this December, I am asking for 2 months off, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'll get back to Medusa in a second, but just, you know, in the whirlwind of traveling, playing a ton of shows, like just kind of being on another level with the project, is there anything you've learned or anything that you didn't expect about the pace of life? I
guess it would just be because like at one point this is what I wanted the most, and it is still when it comes to like what I want out of life. It's just like you start at a small window of time. Like a lot of people are doing like 5 years to get to that level of like 5 years at the least. And I had a really small window of time because I had really awesome cosigns in songs that came out with people that were huge. And I think the main thing would have been that in 2019, I would have never expected that. In 2022, I'm going to be like, like making myself still keep going, I guess, in a way, because it's a lot of travel. And mentally, it can just be a lot of very draining. Lately, I've been in a spot where I'm like really trying to get through these next couple months. And I'm also always just reminding myself, like, it's a blessing. This is what you worked for. Make the most of it. But I think I wouldn't have expected the mental toll that traveling and, well, I know partying can take a toll in general, but like being, you know, the person who always gets the bottle, or like, you know, or like who it's always kind of given if you're always in these headliner positions. And like, I think finding that balance for yourself as a person is super crucial if you want longevity. And that's been a big thing for me this year, is just trying to figure out like how to like grapple this new life that I'm living in. Right.
And sort of realizing that the party will literally never end if you don't want
that
it
has been kind of one of the scary thoughts, is I'm just like, well, because like there'll be points where we do have great weekends and you're with some of your greatest friends and you're high, you get up here, And then you're also like, oh my God, I got to leave for another one of these in like 3 days. Right. And you're just like, I just want to be home. But yeah, and also I've had to do some learning of like I am my own boss, but like, I think I didn't really realize that for a while. And like, I say when. So like, if I need months or something off, like I know it's something I can ask for or tell people that's going to happen. And just be more solidified in that, I guess, from here on out, because I want to be a machine.
Right.
But then, regular life comes into all of it.
No, of course. I mean, that's the thing is, whatever else is going on in your life, you still got to get up on stage if you're booked for that show. And yeah,
absolutely.
You don't necessarily always want to do it.
It's true. It's great when you have the shows where you maybe weren't wanting to do it, and then you get in there and everyone's just electric and so happy to be there.
Of course. Yeah. And those moments, I mean, it's that little hit of like, oh, right, this is why I do that.
Right.
Absolutely. That kind of thing. But I will say, just to bolster kind of where your head is at right now, I don't think you need to feel bad at all for the days where you kind of just feel like, fuck this,
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many friends that have echoed that back to me, and mirrored that for me. It really is like, I have so many great people there that understand where my head's at, but it is one of those things too, where I'm like, well, like I worked for this, like, this is what you wanted. So like, you gotta just put your best foot forward. And, I'm thankful for everything we've gotten to do, for sure.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's worth saying too, I talk about this on the podcast a lot. I think as anyone grows older, as your career progresses, as you change as a person, as an artist, any of that, like your idea of success is going to change too. And like, what is success and what do I actually want out of this, right?
Absolutely. I think for me too, since switching, like we have like a different format every now and again where we'll get to do I do choreo and stuff on stage and like really, really perform when it comes to like the vocals with like friends of mine who are my dancers. And ever since we did that in the summer, I had to kind of like switch back into regular DJ mode. And there's moments where I just feel like I internally am not as fulfilled because I'm like, I want to do that every night. I want to do like this version of that show that I see us having the scope of. And like, I think that's going to be the next thing, is like getting to the point where I can really feel internally like I'm pursuing the full level of what we're trying to bring to the table. But sometimes you're in a DJ booth and you can't go do anything. So it doesn't matter.
Well, what was that evolution for you as a performer from, just going from DJing to having the idea to include your vocals? Then, take me through the whole process, because what you do now, you're working way harder than someone who's just standing there DJing, Right.
Well, and that's why now that I know what that's like, I think that's when I can tell. I'm like, oh, well, you're just like standing here randomly rapping at certain points versus like when we know we're trying to give a show. But I mean, me and my brother started making music together when I was probably like 15. So I always had that experience recording music with him and working, like him teaching me stuff in FL Studio.
And were you doing vocals back then?
Yeah. So I would do mostly sing-songy stuff. But then like I also had, like, I wrote a lot, and I had raps that I'd write. And then like I would be at, I remember there was like this friend's 16-year-old birthday party, and like they gave me the mic and like just had me rap. And it was like the first time I ever like did a rap in front of a bunch of people, and they freaked out and were like, oh my God. And I remember that mixed with recording with my brother was always a part of me, as well as I was a dancer at that point and wanted to perform in some capacity. So eventually, I'm starting to DJ, starting to learn production. I'm working with a lot of people who are like production wise, way, way more talented than me. And I'm trying to like bring stuff to the table. Super Future was like the first person to bass music, where it was like, he has such good music, and I can't, like, as a producer, I don't know exactly what I'm bringing to it. And I was like, I'm just going to do this rap. And the rap in our song Signal was one of the first ones I wrote when I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And it just kind of circled around, and I'm pretty sure that's the one that got GRiZ to want to put me on Medusa.
Oh, wow.
So it's really, really a big picture thing, but it was really just all of those things like slowly leading into each other, a natural progression. And then from there, you know, getting Medusa just, you know, for a year and a half, just kind of doing the DJ and rap thing on stage and like kind of understanding how that stage presence works. And then right before Forest last year, a few months before, I was like, Forest is obviously my hometown thing. So like, I was like, well, we're going to do choreo and we're going to like really do like a show, because at this point, I just want to keep trying to bring these elements that were so important to me when I was a young kid and what I enjoyed about music, which was like this big show atmosphere. I just wanted to start bringing those things together. So I think that's kind of just how it all came together. It's like one thing slowly just kept bleeding into the other.
Yeah. What was people's reaction when you first started, you know, playing out and first started like going beyond just the standard DJ set?
At least with rapping, like venues hated it. Venues didn't want to deal with the mic situation, which is fair. Like I understand you just think of like every.
I don't know.
Well, it's not. It's just if you think of every angry sound guy on a night where he thought he wasn't going to have to do anything on a DJ night where he already hates everybody that's DJing. It's like like I am your worst nightmare in that scenario.
The very first I used to throw. This is another lifetime ago, but in Chicago when I was still just a local DJ there, I would throw a monthly night, and the very first one I ever threw was at this shithole basement bar, and we had just gotten everything set up and nothing was working, and there was a big crowd there. I went back to the sound guy to see what the deal was, and he was just playing World of Warcraft.
You're like, dude,
that you just described that sound guy, where I was like, hey, do you mind like making the system work? And he was just so annoyed.
Like just pissed off that you even asked.
Yeah, that is like, I've had you gotta do 5
even in
minutes of work.
I've had a couple instances where it's like just asking for anything, but you just smile, catch more flies with honey.
No, of course. And that's the way, obviously, you should treat everyone you work with and all that. Yeah. And the work that sound guys do is incredible and we need it. And right. I very much appreciate
And also the best thing in the world is when you had a sound guy who was maybe like, okay, what are you doing? And then they see, I'll have this where they'll see what I was doing that was different in the lineup of DJs that night. And I'll get off stage and they'll be like, and I'll be like, you're the best.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it. We got his approval. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to hear you say, too, that some of the raps you wrote when you were 15, you know, ended up being the things that opened up some doors for you down the road, too. That's kind of a beautiful like metaphor almost of like that you were on the right path back then, you know?
Apparently. I definitely, because I remember GRiZ played Signal, the one that had my 15-year-old rap in it, right before he asked me to do Medusa. So in my head, I was like, clearly he heard there's something going on there, like, because he hadn't heard me do it in person. And you never really know like what was the thing. But for me, seeing kind of a thing there, I was like, that's crazy because I just had that in my brain from when I was in high school. So you never know what's going to end up, you know, kicking the can down the road and being a big thing for you.
Well, one thing I talk about on here a lot is kind of that at a certain point, every artist tries to get back to when they were a kid and tries to get back to that pure version of themselves or what got them excited or into it in the first place. And your version of it, I like even more because it's really the kid is the one who did the work, you know?
Yeah. The kid knew, I think that's the version of me that was that young, saw what I wanted to do. And it was essentially like a DJ version of like Lady Gaga, but like, where like I am controlling how the sound's going and everything. And like, now it's just this, you know, as an adult, this opportunity to kind of like really dig deep and find what's going to make me happy and this project and what's going to connect with people.
Yeah, I mean, the pop music angle is something I wanted to ask you about too, because I know just from reading up about you and your music as well, that there's, you know, you're a fan of pop music and there's huge pop influences in what you do. Do you see yourself, because I think for me, it's so cool to see you on dance music stages doing what you do and bringing that element to it, because I think there's an alternate reality version of you where you would kind of start there and then go into the pop world or move away from that.
Yeah. So I think the thing is most of the opportunities are in dance music, but then like I got to do a song with like Dev this year from like a G6, and like that is like one of those things where it's like that's like an idol for me. So like I like and also I think we're announcing a song with like Boogie T today, which is so heavily like bass music. And like, I just like to be able to kind of do everything in a way. And I came up as like a DJ in the bass scene. So I have this core, like the people who know my shows, that's this one area of music where I'm going to continue to get booked. But then I'll randomly have songs with like pop stars. Right. So like, I want to be able to do it all, you know? But I think also with just like the EDM community and everything, like it's like when it comes to shows, like they know what I'm bringing to the table and they're kind of the best people to continue to have this like big audience with.
How did you start DJing in the first place?
Newmark Mixtrack Pro 3. And my laptop that I still use to this day in 2015. It was just essentially, I was so immersed in trap and bass music. I loved it so much. And I would always have ideas. But then it just eventually, it was like, okay, like I'm going to just get the means to mess around. And then, you know, goes from like house parties to pretty much like 3 years of just house parties, random mixes on SoundCloud, stuff that I liked, none of my own music. And then eventually it going into the other direction. But yeah, it was just, I like loved trap music and bass music. And I was like, I have to play with this in some way.
Yeah, just have to be involved with it.
Yeah.
Were you always that way, even as a kid, in terms of things you were passionate about, of like not just being a fan, but like wanting to get involved?
Yes. I think I've always, and no matter what it is, if I really, really like something, like I would have full on Lady Gaga concerts. Room.
Right.
Like to the right choreo, to the just set list. And like, I've always been like a diehard nerd for the things that I really care about. And at that point in my life, I was, you know, really in love with bass music and stuff like that. So I was just kind of trying to find my own way to express my love for it. And it would normally at that point just be in like weird mashups with like acapellas or transitions and stuff, like finding my own voice through those things and things that I liked, but and it turned into a whole career.
Well, what kind of music, you know, before trap music and bass music, maybe even before Lady Gaga, like what was around you growing up as a kid? Like, did your parents play music in the home? Did friends?
My dad played a lot of. My dad was like a big, like he got us like, I remember a pivotal thing for me and my brother with at least like electronic music was like he had the Eiffel 65 album when we were younger.
Oh yeah,
Euro Pop is amazing album, and it's like that was like a start. And then there'd be like the random like the Barbie Girl or like the random electronic hits. And then my brother would always bring home like Missy Elliott or like kind of newer hip hop stuff. I mean, then I was always obsessed with like Britney Spears pop music and just pop music in general. And it was kind of like a big, diverse, like vibe that I would get from like my mom having really pretty emotional music. My dad, 80s hair bands / like new dance music. Right. Then my older brother always looking up to him for like what was cool. And then eventually, I think just all of those things as a younger person, like a really like a kid really shaped how I was as a teenager. Cause then I was like, I mean, Tumblr days, just always searching for new pop music that wasn't really like out, or like it kind of turned me into a crate digger vibe where I was just really trying to find new music.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that gets you a little bit more into the underground stuff too. And
yeah.
And that's a DJ mentality, of course. It's like digging
absolutely.
For the
I mean, yeah, it's like a great quality to have as a DJ.
Yeah, absolutely. What did your folks do? Especially your dad. I'm curious if he's like got a Skrillex ringtone. I'm really trying to picture this person.
He does like engineering stuff for like car factories. Like it's kind of always been, I think the first one when I was younger was like Chrysler. And but it's just been stuff like that. Like overseeing productions and stuff like that. And then my mom she worked on the postal route.
Oh, sure.
And now she's just a vibe.
Yeah. Those are both such solid Midwestern jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. My dad definitely wouldn't give, like, if he wasn't doing anything like sick that was like warranting the Skrillex ringtone.
Right. So, I mean, with that background, what do they think of what you do?
My mom they're both super supportive. My mom and my brother, we've all made music together and like have music together in the last year that's come out.
Oh, that's amazing. Wait, what does your mom do on the track?
So she sings.
Oh, amazing.
And she was a singer, like never like performer, but like she would record herself and stuff when she was younger, like in the 80s. But like she's a really beautiful singer. So we put her voice on some stuff this year. But I guess when I say I was working on stuff with my brother when I was 15, like she was right there in the room, also adding her voice to it and stuff like that. My dad's super cool with it now that there's like dollar signs behind it. But I think I can understand because I was also like flailing as a human being at one point before it was, making me money. And if you're watching your kid just kind of like flail, you're like, oh my God, like they need to do, they need to make things work the way that I see how things work.
And if you yourself build cars and then your kid says, I want to be a DJ, it's
right.
From that
and there was a point where it'd be like, okay, that's cool. But then like, if your life is falling apart a lot, it's like, okay, well, like get your life together before you worry about being a DJ too. So I had those experiences with my father, but then like, now that everything's good, I mean, I was on like Bonnaroo and Stevie Nicks was there and he was like, what? Yeah. So like shit like that happens and I'm like, yeah, like I'm doing it. I'm making you proud.
Well, so do you think, and I'm not trying to pry here, but that period of your life that was maybe a little messier when you were still figuring it out, did you figure it out, which enabled you to sort of get serious about the music stuff? Or was it that the music stuff started taking off, which helped put the life together a little?
So essentially, I had like a really rough period with drugs in like 2017, 2018. And I think just after like a straight year of like knowing I needed to make changes while also still like focusing on DJing and stuff here and there, like I just like had a moment where I moved back up to Northern Michigan, got a serving job and was at my grandparents' house for probably like 6 months. And every day I would just work on sets or work on mixes and I would just did that nonstop and eventually kind of got away from the toxic behavior. And I think just having it was like a strong 6-month period where I like went back to square one, lived at my grandparents. I'm thankfully still friends with all these people now, but like, when you have your friends like distancing themselves from you, it makes you like check yourself as a person. Yeah. And thankfully I just had the kind of like come to Jesus vibe where that all happened. And then eventually I started getting booked and I had a better kind of mindset to take it all on with. And yeah, I'm glad I got that.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, I mean, if you had blown up and still had, those serious issues.
I mean, I still like blowing up and having any sort of substance abuse history is like, it's always going to be a journey for me.
Yes.
But thankfully I kind of know where my like lines are at this point.
Yeah. Well, and it's the fact even just that you're thinking about it, I think is super valuable in terms of like what we were talking about earlier, maintaining a balance between like the work has to get done and you have goals you want to achieve and all that. And so, how do we enjoy that process, but still get it done, Right. It's like, yeah, it's a tough thing. And it's something on every level, somebody deals with some version of that,
Oh, without a doubt. We all have to figure out our own balance in life. I'm currently still figuring it out, but like, I'm very thankful I have a great support system. My partner is always there for me and knows like, I just have great people in my life that like, if it's a code red, I can be honest. So
yeah, absolutely. Do you think you'll stay in Detroit?
For now, yeah, we really I love Detroit because it's close to family. My partner, his mom lives in Tennessee, so she's like 8-ish hours away from us. I think I also, it was like 2019, I had that like, I got to go to Denver. I got to go, but like, I like kind of made it work pretty well, not like living in
Detroit's great.
Anywhere
I
else.
Love Detroit.
So yeah. So, and I also just love being 3 hours from my mom. So, I personally I don't really want to leave, but you never know what like wild hair I'll get.
No, of course. I mean, Detroit also incredible, birthplace of techno and insane dance music history.
We have a great scene that we can go and enjoy, and there's a lot of great people here too. Plus, it's like I always say, it's like the Colorado of the Midwest.
I think that's true. Yeah.
We have legal weed, we have good music, and
isn't who else? I was just talking to somebody. Isn't Peekaboo out there too?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still out here. I don't know if he moved, but he's from here for sure.
Yeah, and like Movement Festival is amazing out there too.
Movement's the best. I wish I could. It's obviously Memorial Day weekend. You're trying to get booked and everything. That I couldn't be there this year, but my partner worked it, and I love Movement. I've only gotten to go once in my whole Michigan experience because I was such a bass kid. Now I love house and techno.
Yeah. So. Do you see your own sound changing or evolving? Do you plan far out into the future of like, I want to get to this point? Or is it kind of more in the moment, this is just what's speaking to me?
It's more like in the moment what's speaking to me. And like this summer, the lead off of our EP was like a housey song. But like we haven't really put out a bunch of house music. Like, I fucking love house music.
Yeah.
So I don't really like, I've kind of like heard from friends where they, if you get to like GRiZ or Excision level, you have to play these like other sets to emphasize that side of your taste. And it's not that I don't want to do that. Like, I think that's awesome that they're able to kind of like have like two completely different sides, like Detox sets or Chasing the Golden Hour. But I have a thing in me where like, if I want to play a certain type of music in a set, I want to figure out how I can do it in the same Wreckno set rather than have to differentiate or split between what normal people are normally expecting. Right. And I'm still near the beginning of my career, so I feel like I can kind of choose how like my vibe is out there. So I will play like house, garage, drum and bass, dubstep, bass music, like all in the same set, and like just be like, that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
And that's how I like it.
No, that's how I like it too. That's how I came up as a DJ. That's all of my favorite people I would see when I was a kid. That's what they did. I have a huge love for that. And you're right that you really do hear that from a lot of people that like that's a bad idea to do, or that'll make things harder. And
it's like, and because I understand, because like Excision, when he's makes the Detox sets because he literally can't play certain stuff in what his fan base is expecting. And for me, I'm obviously not Excision, and that's a really heavy side of music. And I kind of have with my vocals and stuff, I can put Wreckno vocals on anything.
Right.
And it kind of allows for that, I think, freedom in a way. So I really appreciate the eclecticism of like when people can kind of masterfully do it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great to set that as sort of like one of the defining things of a project, because I think we need more of it, but B, I think that's just as achievable as someone saying, I'm going to do one thing and stick to that. Like to me, I always just get annoyed when people try to tell you that there's a rule of how you should do it.
There are no rules.
Exactly.
There are no rules. And I think that's something I would have told myself when I first started, instead of, because I would almost like alienate myself from certain kind of like almost like boys clubs, because you get on like producer Twitter and you're like learning when you're reading all of this like just like shit about like how you might be doing something wrong. It like almost like deters you from wanting to learn.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And like, I think that was a big hurdle I had, where I was just like, well, I'm not doing this exactly how X, Y, and Z bass producers doing it. And I wish I could go back and be like, fucking make it work.
I relate to what you're saying. I think a lot of people have that experience in one way or another of sort of feeling like, I love this music, or there's something in this scene that really speaks to me, but what is the predominant culture of it isn't really my vibe. And I think that excludes a lot of people in one way or another. You know, like we're talking about musically at the moment, but it could be a million different things. And it's something that's frustrated me with how big dance music has gotten in the last 10 years, where I do feel like it used to be just more free form in general, and people were more open-minded.
Yeah. I think also now there's just such strong, there's like, I think it's like, it just depends on which genre you're going to. Like, I really like it, like I said, an eclectic vibe where like, if I was at a certain headliner set, I wouldn't be like if we could just get a taste of it all, that's how I enjoy it. But,
well, when I think about a song like Medusa, I mean, that's hard to categorize genre wise anyway, but really what that song is just a party, right? And so if you're known as an artist that like, that's a party, not like that's a dubstep DJ.
Right. You know? Yeah. It's like, then expect a party when you come.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the flip side of the party you? Because I think the public persona of Wreckno is very in your face, very party, very loud. What's the flip side? Like, how do you calm down? How do you relax? How do you unwind? How do you take care of yourself?
I love video games. I'm obsessed with women's wrestling.
Women's wrestling?
Yes, women's wrestling. I love women's wrestling so much. So I think as an adult, I've had the ability to kind of like dive into the things I really did enjoy as a kid. And now I'm just like, come home and I'm just like a big fucking nerd.
Yeah.
Like I just enjoy, like video games, women's wrestling, and I just fucking hang out and like enjoy the things I like, as well as like get some work done when I can. And that's kind of how I decompress that, and just like enjoying TV shows with my partner. I honestly, things that keep me in the house really, just because like, I think at the beginning, or even a year ago, I had much more of a desire to like go to shows or go to clubs and stuff like that. And now it's more like, I want to be a literal grandma and do everything that's the opposite of what my normal life is. And that's kind of how I.
That's good. That's that balance we were talking about before. I think that makes perfect sense. All right. Well, as we're kind of wrapping this up here, I wanted to talk about the last record you dropped called Easy. That I love that song. It's a couple things on it. First of all, it came out on 4 Loko Records, which was a thing.
That it did.
How? Talk to me about 4 Loko Records, because that's just a question. Crazy thing.
So a year-ish ago, we got a pretty much just an offer from them. We made our Honey Drip video, which essentially was me investing in my project. It was like, I don't know, a lot of people don't do music videos in the EDM scene. So for people who don't know, my manager always says, if you shoot a music video, you're essentially choosing to hemorrhage money. And that is the truth. It is so fucking expensive, especially if you want a quality music video. You can do, Friends, and that's cool. But like, we wanted something really up there. And I just threw a lot of fucking money at music videos in 2021. And because it was what I wanted a visual element to my project. I wanted people to understand that this was an art project as well as a music project. I want people to see me in that light rather than, not.
Yeah.
And someone from 4 Loko's team, they had started 4 Loko Records. And there had been Valentino Khan had a music video, or like a song deal and a music video. And then Lil Marika, I think, had one.
Oh, yeah.
We were like the third people to get offered. And essentially we got a 2-song deal where they did everything with me, Super Future, and Dev. And they paid for music video, rollout. And then that was in April. And then Easy was our second video deal with them. And essentially we were like, hey, I want to be a Barbie doll. And I was.
Yeah, that's so fun. The idea of 4 Loko Records is just great to me. That seems like that should have happened a long time ago.
It's so funny too, because we had you obviously have to kind of like use Four Loko in the videos in some way. And my favorite was we just put it in when I was a nurse Barbie, we had the green in a IV bag, and it looks like poison.
Oh, but like, don't give these kids ideas. There's somebody's so where are you at musically post that? Like, is there anything you want to say about what is to come for you musically?
Right now I'm on I've got a few opportunities from some awesome people in the industry. I just got an opportunity from GRiZ to put some vocals on a song last week. Like, I'm really just in we usually have our big rollout, for an EP in the summer. So right now I'm kind of in this come down period where I have some really great vocal ideas that I'm trying to shop around to some producers to see if we can get a monstrous collab going. But I'm also kind of just in a come down chill period too, where it's if something, I work the best when something catches my ear and I have no plans. And then I feel like I work the worst when I have a deadline / someone has sent me a beat and I feel like I'm obligated to do it because it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And that has been something I've been trying to understand the balance of, because then I'll get sent something by just a friend of mine who maybe isn't huge, or who your management wouldn't be well, that's not going to push this or that. It's yeah, but this is what I want to rap over right now. And really just trying to find those things that stick out to me. One of my favorite things right now is a song with my friend Kyoto, who's in Denver, and it's called USG, US Garage. And it's essentially just his love letter to UK Garage.
Right.
But we're in America, so it's USG. And I'm actually debuting it at Red Rocks next week. So I'm very excited.
Oh, amazing. That'll be fun. Man, that's a strong, calling it USG. He will get some feedback one way or another from some UK folks.
Yeah, he will. No, absolutely. I'm it's not the final title, but yeah, I know what you mean.
No, that's awesome. I would love to hear that. Who made you want to rap?
A mixture of Missy Elliott, and then in high school it was Azealia Banks. I just remember listening to Azealia Banks. Love her.
Yeah,
she's crazy.
She's very she's a whole different thing now. But I mean, when she first came out, that it was a.
Oh no! I mean, I think that people, when she first came out, it was you just saw the world in this rap dress, and you were for me, I mean, she makes music that is so for queer culture, the gays love Azealia Banks, even though it's we don't maybe take everything that she says as 100, but her music, it was definitely very housey ballroom type beats that were just some of the sickest rap and flow that you'd ever heard. So she really did that for me. I would just study her songs and try to emulate.
Yeah. I did a show with her in Montreal when I think 212 had just come out, and she hadn't really popped off yet. It was about to happen. And I was DJing for another rapper named Kid Sister at the time, and Azealia Banks was opening the show. And I remember just watching her. She was maybe 16 or 17, super young.
Really young.
And playing to a crowd that wasn't a huge crowd. And people were kind of into it, and, but they just didn't know who she was yet. And it kind of was, watching it, I could kind of tell. I was oh, this is gonna be something
huge. Yeah. Because then when 212 is still I think Rolling Stone just put it in as one of the best songs up at the last.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible because it's
a banger.
Oh, it's such a banger. Yeah, because that's one of those that hits the sweet spot between underground and mainstream.
Yeah.
Speaks to queer culture and dance culture and
hip hop, it's all of it.
Oh, absolutely, all of it. And it's the frat bros can get down to, it's it just hits every quadrant. It's one of those magical songs.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely I will always have a soft spot in my heart for just her artistry in general. She's definitely inspiring with her flow.
Before I wrap it up, is there anything else we haven't talked about? Anything else you want to get out there? Anything you wish I would have asked?
Not really. I feel like we covered pretty much everything. I am making my Red Rocks debut next week, opening for REZ on Thursday, the 27th. So I'm very excited about that.
That's going to be awesome. Yeah, enjoy that. And then is it break time after that?
It is not. Okay. Break time doesn't come until the new year. Okay. And then I'll have 2 months off. But we are currently on the fantasy tour. So I'm coming to a town near you.
Oh yeah. We'll push all those dates. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
And it's got to be nice. At least you know the break is coming, right?
Yeah, it's on the way, and that's all I needed. I just needed to know that it was on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll wrap this up just by asking the final question. I ask this at the end of a lot of these interviews. Just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life. Could be from any time, could be from when you were a kid, last week, anytime, when in that memory, in that moment, music really had a big impact on you, really hit you hard in that moment. And that could be something like gave you goosebumps. It could be just the right song played while you were in a good mood and it was a nice memory. Really anything, totally open to interpretation, no wrong answer.
I would say recently, so Lady Gaga was my first concert when I was 14 and it would have been 2011. And recently me and my manager just got to go see her in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And I remember being a 14-year-old and being inspired in the stands, obviously, but being 26 and watching someone do at like literally the highest level that you can be a performer in a sold out like Wrigley Field. That with also being able to take the inspiration back to what I do now was like, I can't even put it into words. Like that was something that recently just really hit me, and being able to kind of like, I mean, a lot of the time too, when you're in a performer mindset, you almost like don't watch shows the same way, at least in like for EDM. Like I don't always like just enjoy a DJ set anymore, like, cause you're around it so much. To kind of just like go back to the root of just being like why you liked music for in the first place and feel that as an adult was like very special to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a beautiful moment. And it makes me think of, she's in a different place than when you first discovered her, and she's changed.
Not a doubt.
Obviously she's changed as an artist and evolved and grown bigger and all of that. But, it also says to me that sky's kind of the limit for you as well, both as a fan and a performer. Like there's always further to push it, which I think she exemplifies.
I always bring it back to her. I played Lollapalooza and I was like, well, Lady Gaga played Lollapalooza one time when she was younger and you never know what can happen. And the girl's like, so you're saying you're Lady Gaga? And I was like, I didn't say that.
No, you said that. Yeah. But if you're saying it, then yeah.
I'm like, I won't fight.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you for taking the time to do it.
Likewise, my friend. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your tour. Have a great break. And I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Enjoy your night.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.